Just gonna switch more light on.
Yeah, sure, please.
Go right ahead.
Yeah, okay. So I have a few line of questions that you must have received from Badrinath, I guess, already. So I just wanted to
Uh,
start.
Go right ahead. I haven't received. I did receive the questions from Bajrant, but I'd much rather pretend I haven't, so that I'm more fresh. Go right ahead, my man.
It's all right. You can start your method acting from right now.
Okay.
So yeah, I just wanted to start with a personal question first of all. So I read that you came to Mumbai in 2006
Hmm.
to co-write a story with Pen Nalin, Indian French
Yes.
film, and that was based on Saadat Hassan Manto's Toba Tek Singh.
Hmm.
So how did that happen? Like, how did that opportunity come, and how did you arrive at Mumbai?
I was working at the time, just before working with Nalan. I was working with a French American producer, screenwriter by the name of Frederick Lean. He and I were working on a script, and we had had such a wonderful experience that when Nalan, a mutual friend of ours, asked that he find a screenwriter who was English speaking in Paris, France, that Fred put my name forward. And Nalan and I met, and we immediately had some synergy, and we decided to work together. And that is how I came to first taste Indian cinema, and then first came to India. And it's been a life changing experience ever since.
Yeah. So like that's how you came up like with the idea of you starting an acting studio in Mumbai.
No, that came much later. In '06, I came here as a screenwriter. And then in 2009, I returned to India after 3 years because some circumstances in my life had changed in France.
Sure.
And from 9 to 12, I was here. I was teaching acting, I was teaching writing, and I really liked it. I got married and had a little boy.
Oh,
At that
congrats.
time, yeah, at that time, his mother and I decided to move back to the United States, where I started working again in film schools and acting studios. That's when I was at the Lee Strasberg Institute. And in returning to India in 2013 to direct the play, whilst I was rehearsing actors for the play, it became clear to me that actors here, whilst are very talented and working quite a bit, they were lacking in a more formal training.
Right.
And I thought that maybe starting an acting studio here was a possibility. So I spoke with my wife and my family, and we decided that we'd return to India from New York. And in 2014, we started the studio. But the studio was something that happened about 8 years after my first trip here. And it was because of what I felt was a need to bring a more, excuse me, a more formalized training system, conservatory training system to India, and that's where it came from.
Sure, sure. That's a really good opportunity, like for aspiring actors over here, like because there's not much of a formal training available in India, I would say, for
Thank you,
method acting, specifically. Because,
thank you,
yeah.
thank you.
Okay, so okay, my next question is that generally people would ask you that what are the qualities to become a good actor, like what are the qualities for becoming a good actor. But since this interview is more like focused on you and your coaching style, so I wanted to ask that what are the qualities that makes coach good acting coach, like what are the qualities that you think that should be in an every coach.
Well, I think the things that go into a good acting coach are the same things that go into a good actor, and maybe the same things that go into being a good husband or a good wife or a good son or a good daughter or a good friend. Listening. I think that a good acting coach, a good actor, and a good human being, whatever title you might happen to have, is better enhanced by his or her ability to listen. Because ultimately, you're dealing with other human beings.
Yeah.
And other human beings have desires, needs, thoughts, emotions. And rather than projecting your own on them, you need to listen to what is coming out of or off of the instrument of the individual or individuals in front of you. And then and only then can you steer them towards a deeper understanding of themselves, a deeper understanding of their craft, and hopefully help them harness something that is unique and genuine to them and them alone. So I think that the number one quality that we all should possess, but certainly acting instructors, is be a good listener. Because one of the things that an acting instructor and a director must remember is that this isn't about me. It's about the actor. It's about the performance. It's about the story. And if I insert myself and my own self too much, then I run the risk of making this about me. It's not. I can certainly express my opinion. I certainly can steer the conversation, but I must remember that I am a participant and I am also a listener. And that I would think is the most important quality in an acting instructor is to listen. Listen to your actors. Listen to what they want. Listen to where the problems are. Listen to the questions. And listen to where it's going correctly. Find out what they feel because ultimately you can't feel for another human being. You can offer advice, you can offer direction, you can certainly offer instruction, but ultimately it is they who have to navigate their own way.
That is like a really good answer, Jeff. Because last night or just a few days before, I was watching this American TV show, Ted Lasso. You must have heard about it. So so there's this character. He was also a football coach actually. So there's this one line he said. Ki I listen more than I talk. So that was like kind of summing up the whole character of his, like he himself summing up the entire character throughout the series. So I guess it really resonates with him being coach and you also being a coach. Like it seems like a really important characteristic for being a coach, and it really relates to the same.
Good to know that Ted Lasso and I are on the same page.
That's he's a really optimistic person. You must you should watch. Yeah. So okay. So moving on. Have you watched Whiplash?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so you must be, like you must have seen that the kind of coach the character got, he was a little bit, what would I say, a little on the extreme side, I would say. So, like, have you encountered this kind of coaching in your life, and like, do you support this kind of coaching, or do you like,
I loved the film. I thought it was a great film. And my students would tell you that I'm sometimes very sweet, but I can also be very dry. I think that the one thing from that character that I believe the actor's name is J.K. Simmons. I believe that's his name. I think the thing that comes through that character that's important is this that when you're dealing with a student whose dream, you're not teaching math, you're not teaching physics,
right?
you're teaching them about their dream, right? Music is this young man's dream, acting is someone's dream, physics could be someone's dream. When you're dealing with something that is someone is passionate about, that they truly love, you must remember two things. One is never to lie to them, because lying to them would be to lead them astray. Now, there are ways in which you could do that, and in the case of the film, the character is very blunt and very hard.
Yep.
I don't know that you need to be hard all the time, and like my mom used to always say, and still does say, you catch more bees with honey than vinegar.
Right. That's true.
So tell the truth. I think the one thing that comes through that type of coaching is tell the truth. How you deliver the truth, that's up to you. And the second thing that I think is very important in that when you're teaching someone their passion is to always remember that you yourself possess the same passion. I remind myself all the time, and I remind my students all the time, that their dream of being a successful actor, writer, director, filmmaker, creative voice is also mine. That dream hasn't left me. The same dream they have when they shut their eyes and they see success at the Academy Awards or Cannes or the Golden Globes is the same dream I have. I know that dream vividly well. And I want to share that with them because I want them to understand that I too am working towards the same things. And we're just sharing that experience. Perhaps I know a little more because I've been at it longer, but the hierarchy of things ends there. We are on the same plane working towards the same goal. And the more we feel like we're colleagues and comrades, the more we're going to work together. Because as an instructor of the arts, we must remember that whilst we may know more about certain tools or we may have been at the process longer, there is still much we can learn from our students. There's still a huge amount of information and exchange that can occur. So, what do I think of that character? I think he's dry. I think he's hard. But I also think he's honest. And I think that he's also fair. And fairness is very important. And another thing that I think, although he says this in a very rude, dramatic way, because remember, it is a film,
Yeah.
we have become way too comfortable with things being okay,
Yeah.
things being mediocre. That's not acceptable. In the arts, as in physics, as in anything you do in life, you must, maybe you won't achieve, but you should certainly aim for the best you can do. I won't use the word perfection because that doesn't exist, and that's a completely false metric. No one can achieve that. But the best, the absolute best, that we should always strive for. And sadly, I feel like today, less and less that is true. And that is frustrating. But nonetheless, that doesn't mean that in your own individual craft, and specifically the people who are going to watch this interview, I'll speak to you directly. Do your best. Your best might not win you an Academy Award, but it will definitely be a snapshot of who you were on that day. And keep working, keep learning, keep going.
Hmm. But I also think that that kind of coaching sometimes brings out the best potential, the complete potential that one your student might have. Like in the end, he does prove out to be best, right? So that kind of beer might also bring out the best potential of your student.
That depends, my friend, because not everybody learns the same way. Some people respond very well to a hard driving force, and other people need a little more nurturing and finesse. It's different for everybody. And I think that when we treat people with the same brush, we forget that not everybody is the same. And we have to remember that sometimes people need a little more care, sometimes people need a little more hammer, sometimes people need a little more stick, sometimes people need a little more feather, and it's different for everybody. And the arts permit that. And I think as an instructor, you must adapt yourself to the individual and individuals you're working with. And you have to recognize who you're dealing with. And once again, that comes back to listening,
Yeah.
listening to how they're responding. It's kind of like a motorcycle. You're not going to push it in a certain gear because you're going to start to hear that the engine is
Yeah.
overheating,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Sometimes you got to change gears, but sometimes you got to go up and sometimes you got to go down.
Down.
You got to listen to the machine. Well, human beings aren't machines, but when you listen to them, you know what directions you can go. And sometimes you can feel when you're riding a 1000 cc machine, she can keep going. And when you're riding a 100 cc machine, you can't push her too far. That's the same thing with an individual. There are some people who you can push and push and push, and there are other people who you have to gently nudge.
Right, right. So, did you also have an acting coach like yourself? The kind of person you are talking about. Because
Uh,
just sorry for interrupting, but I read about you that you had two bachelors, like a bachelor's in history and a bachelor's in film, and you loved Hemingway, you loved history. So, how did that diversion come from history to film? How did acting came into your life? How did writing and how did starting an acting studio, how this all happened?
well, we don't have time to answer all of that because we'll be here for a bit longer than planned.
Okay, sure.
I think the simple way to say that, my friend, is I love stories. Now, I love stories that sometimes are fictional. I love stories that sometimes are real.
Sure.
I like sometimes being the writer of the story, and sometimes I like being the director. Sometimes I like living the story as an actor. But ultimately, I think if I was to sum up my work as a person who loves to read, write, direct, act, produce, and even spend time with family and friends, it's about stories for me. It's about anecdotes. It's about the human experience and exploring it. And sometimes I like to do that in different ways, in different roles. But ultimately, for me, albeit reading Ernest Hemingway or a piece of history or acting as a character in a play or directing a film, I'm always interested in the narrative and the story. And most importantly, the human experience that accompanies that. I consider myself somebody very interested in humanity and the humanities. And for me, any way in which I can explore that and be contributing to the success of the story, I'm excited about that.
Sure, sure. Okay, so moving on to the next question. Uh, is there like a common acting curriculum or like hard driven rules that coach should follow while teaching their student?
No,
Foundation rules.
I think ultimately, when you teach the creative arts, you're as much creator as you are teacher. And I think that you have to listen to that force that drives you. I'm very blessed that many years ago, a very close friend of mine taught me that my teaching and my directing and writing and all my creativity is from the same part of my brain. I create and teach from the same part of myself. And once I understood that, there's been a real click inside of me, which is to follow my instinct, but also to continue to really research and learn. And I think that any person teaching the arts and learning the arts needs to create a wonderful cycle of learning, expressing, learning, expressing, learning, expressing. And the one thing I tell my students all of the time is this: today, in the world of social media, everybody wants to project an image of himself or herself that is interesting.
Right.
You need to put up interesting pictures or interesting stories or interesting reels, right? I've never been very keen on being interesting. As a matter of fact, I don't even know if I'm personally very interesting, to be very honest with you.
Like people pleasing person.
Not even a question of people pleasing person. I just don't know if I'm interesting.
Right.
The one thing I've always tried to be, my friend, is interested. I'm interested in things. I'm curious. I'm like a big blue whale. I like to go under the water and suck up everything. And anyone who's ever worked with me could tell you that I research things and research things and research things and research things. And ultimately, my answer to your question is this: it's learn. Never stop asking questions. Never stop reading. Never stop watching. Never stop listening. And never stop ingesting the arts. Because when you culture yourself with the arts, you then refine your voice, become more articulate. Because ultimately, the job of the artist is to articulate what's within you. What can you articulate if there is nothing in you? What new can you articulate if you're not learning something new? So, my view is to create a cycle of constant learning and constant expression in which curiosity and being interested in things is at the center.
I agree. I totally agree. Okay. So I wanted to ask about your style of coaching. Like, what are the kind of methods that you use, and what is like an USP of your coaching style that makes you different from other coaching actors that are out there?
I don't know USP. I can't speak for what makes me unique because you'd be surprised to know I don't really know what other people do. But one of the things that I do very often with actors is I push them into the deep end right away, and I don't tell them what they're doing. So I'm the kind of guy who hands you a parachute, flies you up to 50,000 feet, pushes you out of the plane, and says, pull the cord, figure it out.
Oh,
And why do I do that? Because I'm a very big believer in experience based work. You have to experience things. Me talking about it isn't going to help you. You have to do it. Doing is everything. So that's my main teaching style is let's do it. Let's go. Come on. Do the work. Do the work. Do the work. That's all I care about. What you say, what you think is irrelevant to me. What matters to me is what you do between action and cut. That's it.
Awesome, that's awesome. So this is where like your love for theater play stems out, because like you could have gone into commercial movie making, right? But you are like, I feel like you are teaching method acting, and more of your plays like the Altamount Road Murders, they were also like a main of a play and some play theater play. So where
Yeah.
did that, ki I want to go into theaters and play, not into like commercial, not into movie making?
That's an interesting question. I still want to make movies. I do make movies, but theater for me, and I believe in the power of theater because I think that theater is a place where we can debate ideas, we can debate social, economic, philosophical ideas. But also, for me, art has never been about commercial things. Art is about human expression. Sometimes you'll have a commercial idea, other times you won't. But ultimately, what I believe in is expressing a story that matters to me. And anybody who's ever endeavored to act or direct or write knows how hard it is to make something,
Right,
right?
of
It's
course,
so hard
of course.
to do anything. If you're making the most commercial Bollywood film, or you're making the most independent feature film that nobody's going to watch, or you're making the most commercial play that everyone's going to come to, or you're making some small, tiny little play that only two people, including your mom, are going to come to, ultimately, it's hard. My view is if I'm going to dedicate my time to something that's this hard, it has to be meaningful to me. I have to care about it. If I'm going to take time out of my schedule, away from my son, away from my girlfriend, away from my family, away from my friends, to do my work, it's got to mean something to me. And if it doesn't speak to me in my core, then why am I doing it? For money? No, that's not me. That's not who I am. I like money because it provides me the ability to do what I love. The world doesn't run on just love alone. You need some pesa to get through the day. But I've always believed that this journey of my own is about expression and storytelling. And the minute I start to trade that for something more commercial because it's commercial, then I don't think I would recognize myself. And I'll admit I've been very lucky. Every time I've ever taken a job for money, every single time, somehow it fails. And that's a good thing because then I don't get drunk on the idea that I can make lots of money.
Right, right. So basically, it's out of love for storytelling, and
Yes.
that's awesome. Even I aspire to do that someday,
Well, you will do it, my friend. I'm sure of that.
of course. Okay, so okay, I wanted to talk about criticism in your field. Like, have you ever, faced criticism for, or like from your student, if I
Of
could say,
course.
and
Of
from other
course.
acting coaches, and
Of course.
have you criticized other acting coaches for their style?
Um, I am sure people say lots of things about what I do, and I'm sure it's not all wonderful, and that's okay with me. And believe it or not, I love hearing the criticism because it gives me a means with which to improve. It teaches me where I'm not doing my job, and I want to be the best version of myself I can. And I don't pretend to know everything because I just don't. And I don't know how people perceive me. I don't walk around with the mirror on my face, figuring out what I look like, think like, or am like. Ultimately, I want to know what people think. I'm very curious to hear their criticism. I'm much less comfortable with their praise, to be honest. And do I criticize others? I try not to. I'm guilty of criticism myself, and I know that. And it's a sin that I don't like committing. But I genuinely believe everyone, when you put your best forward, no matter how good it is, it's you. And I will always applaud that and appreciate that. What I don't like, what I don't like is when people do things that are purely based on fame, money, posturing themselves. No, no, no. That I don't like. Be real as you can. That's all I ask of people. I have great appreciation for that. Where, yeah, if you're gonna try to sell me something, no thanks. I'm okay. I'm not
True.
into that. But we're all guilty of the sin of criticism. And sometimes criticism can be good as long
Of
as
course.
it's done in the spirit of trying to help someone improve.
That's good. Cool, cool. Okay, so okay, this is an important question from my perspective, I think, because I like to write something. I love writing. I aspire to be a screenwriter one day. So from time to time, I feel like because I do write from time every day. I have this habit of writing at least even 100 words every day. I do write, but sometimes when I just like write a story or anything long short story, I have this self doubt kind of thing that maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe the story that I'm writing is not up to the mark. It's like very mediocre. It's not sell. It won't be liked by audience. It won't be liked by the readers. So I of course believe that this also must be happening to your students. Like sometimes they must be feeling that the kind of acting they are doing maybe it's not up to the mark. It's not, I'm not comparing to the greatest people, maybe just their fellow actor, fellow students, like okay, he's of same age of myself but he's still doing much better than me. So maybe why am I not doing something like that? Maybe I'm not good enough, maybe I do not have it in me. I do love acting, but what if I don't have it in me? So what do you do when someone comes up with that kind of question?
Well, firstly, no one's good enough every day. Okay. It's a bit like sports. Sometimes you hit 100, sometimes you hit five,
Right, right.
sometimes you hit nothing and you're out. It's not an exact science, it doesn't work like that. And the second thing I would say is, of course, you're going to feel like you're not doing well. That's natural. You're human. But my big belief is that as long as you keep working and learning and pushing yourself, you may not get to all the places you dream of. You will get somewhere. But never forget, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. It's about the means, not the end. And as an artist, you don't get to judge whether or not you're great. You don't get to judge whether or not you're even good enough. That's for the audience, producers. That's for them to decide. And it's really cool because it can be very democratic. You put something up and people like it, they watch it. People don't, they don't. And another thing I think is very important is that today people are so concerned about their videos going viral and having tens of thousands of views and lots of hearts and likes. If you put up a video and 100 people watch it, and five of those 100 people like it, let me ask you a question. How many videos a day do you personally watch? And how many of those videos do you personally like?
Yeah, there's a like 10 is to 2 ratio or something like that.
Exactly. We have to recontextualize. I always think if 60 people come to our studio to watch a play, I'm blown away that 60 people chose to get out of their houses, get into their cars, cut through traffic, and spend an evening at our studio. That blows my mind. I can't believe that. Because, I mean, wow, to get out of your house is hard enough. To sit in traffic is even harder. To spend the money, my God. And I just think it's wonderful. And I think that ultimately we have to remember, stop trying to be Beethoven. Just be yourself. Stop trying to be Nasiruddin Shah. Just be yourself.
Of course, we
Stop
can't.
trying. Stop trying to be Gulzar. Just be yourself. Because you know what? Ultimately, you're running your own race, and you're not running it against anyone else.
That's really thoughtful, actually. That's going to really help me personally, actually. So thank you for that
You're
answer.
most welcome, my friend, and I hope that your viewers get some sense of this as well, however they could.
But that actually helps me. I get constructive criticism from my friends now and then. But they are like only 2 3 people. So, but even one of them, when someone says, "Oh, it's good enough," So I'm like, oh, that's it. I'm done. That's like I have the potential to write something. Even if one person, was like, yeah. That's it. So I guess that works. Okay, so earlier we discussed that Hemingway is your favorite writer,
Yes.
but I wanted to ask you about other favorite writer that you grew up reading, or that helped you discover your passion for acting or filmmaking, or you would want other aspiring actors to read also.
Well, I would first say that, and I'm glad you brought this up. I would first say to all aspiring artists, particularly those in the performing arts, you need to read. I think that today there is a major deficit and a big problem among our artists, which
Right.
is they're not readers. They consume a lot of films and series, which is great, but they need to also explore literature, poetry, nonfiction as a means to learning a little bit more and broadening their horizons. The authors who have really spoken to me over the years are people like Tolstoy, Dostoevsky. There's a French writer by the name of Michel Houellebecq, who I quite like, and many poets. I'm a very big fan of poetry. Poets like Robert Frost, poets like Maya Angelou, a Russian poet named Anna Akhmatova, Charles Baudelaire, the French writer. But ultimately, I would tell anyone that is interested in the arts today, you live in a generation where you could type in the 100 greatest authors on your Google and get a list of their books. Start reading them. Start reading great playwrights like William Shakespeare, Samuel Beckett, like anyone that you can find. Read, if you're an Indian, you should read the plays of Mohan Rakesh, Vijay Tandolkar, your own plays. You should read the poetry of Rabindranath Tagore. You should read the short stories of Mamta. Understand your own culture from its literary past as well. Read. Don't just watch. Get your nose into a book.
Interesting, but sometimes even I try to read Dostoevsky. I tried to read Jane Austen, but sometimes I feel like I'm not there yet. To understand the what they have written. It's like
It takes time. It takes time. Reading, like anything, is about developing taste. You're not going to sit down and watch a Tarkovsky film as the first movie you ever watch. That would be a very bad idea.
of course, of course.
So you have to start small and grow. And as your knowledge and your understanding widens, so will your taste, so will your understanding, and so will your appreciation.
Yeah, true. Actually, really true. I also like, some when I don't, why when I don't understand Jane Austen or such classic writers. So what I do to uplift my mood is, just I just read Murakami or all those non-fiction fictional writers. That just kind of brings my interest back to reading, and then I just
And reading also is very personal. You might not like Jane Austen. Not everything that's a classic is great. For instance, Tolstoy, who's probably today more my favorite writer than Hemingway, his last novel, Resurrection, isn't very good. It's okay to say that. It's not against the law. The literature police aren't going to come to my home and arrest me because I don't like a particular Tolstoy book.
of course not, of course not. Thanks for that.
You're
Okay,
welcome.
okay. So we'll wrap it up with one final question. So instead of giving advice to aspiring actors or somewhat experienced actors or who already have means to pursue their passions, I wanted to ask you, what advice would you give to actors who are like just starting out, like literally, they are just finding out, oh, I like acting, I love acting, I want to pursue acting, but maybe they do not have, like, they have nil experience in acting previously, or maybe they do not have resources, to pursue a formal training in writing. So what kind of advice would you give to such people so they can also become good actors or at least pursue their passion?
Okay, a great acting exercise that anybody can do is go online and find Simply Scripts, SimplyScripts, simplyscripts.com, or imsdb.com. These are libraries of screenplays.
Okay.
Pick a screenplay, read the screenplay, and then watch the movie. That is a great acting exercise because it's going to teach you how to imagine what you think it could be and then see what it is. And you can work backwards and decrypt the choices that the actor made. That's one acting exercise you can do right now. Everybody can do. Also, it's going to teach you about how to read a screenplay. And you don't want the first screenplay or the first play you read to be the one you're in. You need to improve your taste and your understanding. And finally, folks, ultimately, acting is all about doing. Start picking up monologues and practice them. Start with monologues, not with scenes. Monologues are something you could practice on your own. You can film on your phone or your computer, or even just show your mom and dad or your brother and sister, your cat and dog, and see how you're doing. And finally, folks, I know that I run an institute that has a formal conservatory, but you are more than welcome to send an email and or a WhatsApp to the phone number and the email address on our studio page, jeffgoldbergstudio.com, and you can send it to me directly. Say, hey, Jeff, I have this question about acting. Hey, Jeff, I need some help. I'm always here to help people, even those people who aren't part of my conservatory. Because ultimately, for me, being an artist begins with sharing. And I am so grateful that I've had wonderful mentors and teachers and friends who have been generous in their lives. And now that I've achieved a certain place in my life where I can give back, I really want to do that. So please, and I really mean this, anybody listening to this interview, please feel free to write an email directly to me at Jeff, Jeff, at jgstudio.in. Jeff at J as in Jeff, G as in Goldberg, studio, studio.in. Ask your questions. I'm here to answer them. And I can't promise I'll answer it within 5 minutes or even 5 days because sometimes I get busy. But I assure you I'll answer your question. And the number one thing you can do is keep practicing, keep working, keep practicing, keep working. Ask your questions and grow.
Such a good thing, man. You are like really good person. It's a
I
good
don't know
thing.
about that. You should ask some of my friends. They might not agree with you.
No, that's like you're giving back to society. That's a good thing. Like many people, they just take from the society and sometimes just forget. Like you also had to give.
I would never ever do that.
But
For me, it's very important to share.
that's really awesome. And thank you for that. What simplyscript.com. I also like.
Yeah, check it out. Have fun.
Actually, I also like to read script and at simultaneously watch. I done it at once only short term 12. I watched it. I was reading the script and I was watching the movie, but it was like a really great experience. You kind of imagine something while you are reading this scene or a conversation between two characters, and then you like see it on the screen and it just blows your mind. Like, oh, this is how they improvising, or this is how they are doing something else.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
that's a real.
Exactly.
That's okay. So I don't
All right.
think okay. I don't think I have any more to ask you. Okay.
Well, thanks a lot, pal. This was really fun. And if you have any other questions, just send them. I'll write to you. Okay?
Of course, and thank you, Jeff, for doing this.
My
Thank you so
pleasure.
much, and
You're welcome.
thank you for being so nice to me.
Thank you, and thank you to everybody who will watch this interview. Take care, folks. Be well. Stay safe.
Good night, Jeff.
Good
Take care.
night.
Bye.
Bye.